You're listening to the Sensuality Project podcast, where the messiness of real life gets sexy, hosted by Stacey Herrera. This podcast is intended for mature audiences only. Episodes contain profane language and topics of a sexual nature that may not be suitable for children. Listener discretion is strongly advised. Welcome to the Sensuality Project podcast. I am your host, Stacey Herrera. Thank you for joining me for another episode. I'm really excited about this episode. Today, my guest is Raven Robinson, and Raven is actually one of my oldest internet friends. She and I have had the most juicy, expansive, evolutionary, aha-filled conversations for a really long time now. And this is my first time having her as a guest on the show. So it was such a good conversation. And as much as I tried to edit it down, I couldn't get it shorter than 2 hours. Which is actually shorter than most of my conversations with Raven. You are really going to enjoy this conversation. There's so much about, connection and intimacy and boundaries and even pettiness. Like we really talked about a lot of really, really great things, especially if you are interested in becoming the most of yourself and if that's some intention that you set for 2019. If so, this episode is for you. So I'm just going to be quiet and let you listen because it's that good. So how was your Thanksgiving?
Oh my gosh, it was wild. It was really, really good, but I was spending time with my family. So I'm up at my sister's house. It was just such a huge change for me from the environment that I'm normally in, which is like me in my little cottage house. And it's so quiet. I can hear the ladybugs like landing on the wall.
Wow, that is quiet.
So from that to a house full of teenagers and like TVs on in every room and game systems and telephones, conversations and all of that. It was just a huge difference. But I had fun. I love being with my family. It was good.
I feel the same way. One of the things I was challenged this Thanksgiving because of electronic devices. Like, I cannot tell you how many times I had to say, like, can we please just be in this room? Like, can we have conversations? And I think that the most challenging part is that people ain't doing shit on their phone. Like, you literally are interrupting a conversation so that you can scroll through your Instagram feed. Like, what the fuck? Instagram doesn't end. Like, you can scroll eternally after this is over and still see that same shit.
Yes. And we can have a conversation now.
Right. But like, I really don't think that people understand that they are actually addicted. Like, it is a dopamine hit and there is an addiction. I was reading an article that was saying that people with ADHD or people on the spectrum are more likely to become addicted to electronics even faster because of the challenges that they have socializing in real, in offline spaces, that they can be social and not have to worry about the awkward pieces. But I'm talking about like people that's not on the spectrum and that.
And I think that there's also like a thing that it does to our eyes.
Yeah.
In the same way that like now EMDR is becoming more popular and that's a way for people to heal through trauma. Like there are all of these, like we're learning how the way that we move our eyes and what we take in, like the blue light and all of that, like it affects every part of our being. That scrolling motion, I think, is doing something horrible to us.
I agree. It's especially concerning to me because I see so many people letting electronic devices be the babysitter for their kids. When you go out to eat meals and people act like they can't not bring the iPad for their child. Like, remember back in the day, and it wasn't that fucking long ago, people used to go to dinner, even with their toddlers, and the toddler engaged in conversation and dialogue at the table, even if it didn't make any sense.
Right.
But like now, like kids are literally, they're sitting at the table. Their parents ain't talking to each other because they on their phones.
Mm-hmm.
and the child has an iPad and like, but it's like, why did you go out to eat? Is it just because you was too distracted with your electronic device to cook?
Right.
Because you didn't come to spend time with each other.
True. You go in there and you spend money
Right.
on something that you probably really already had at home.
Yep.
And no quality time. Yeah. Yeah.
It is
I mean,
disturbing to me.
Yeah. A huge difference for me, and the thing that I'm going to have to like learn how to adjust to is meal times as a whole for me right now, because I've been in this place where like for most of my meal times, it was coming together with a community in a place where phones weren't allowed. Like you might have had it in your pocket, but nobody was pulling out their phones during a meal. And that was a time for connection. Like that was the time that you find people within the community and it's your opportunity to talk to people. Like that was the whole purpose for me of the meal. And
that's what meal's supposed to be though.
Right. And so then like how do you take that into this world where like everybody's on their phones? Or for example, my family, for Thanksgiving, we were hardly even in the same room. Like there was no coming together in one room. Like we said the blessing in the room that had the food in it. And then everybody made their plates and went in a different direction. Yeah. So like the teenagers went in one direction, the little kids went in the other direction. And there were points where the adults were sitting in the room. You know, it was just a bunch of different spaces. So it's like, how do you, within that, bring people together to actually connect over a meal? You know,
it's heartbreaking for me. Like it makes me weep. Like it makes me fucking weep the way that, look, I don't want to throw nobody under the bus. There were several of my family members that even when I kept saying it, wouldn't put their phone away. I am just like, I don't understand. Like, what are we doing here then? Like, can we like, and again, you're not responding to somebody. You're not like, you're scrolling. Like you're not even doing anything. You're not even addressing anybody. Like you are too busy looking at the lives of other people instead of being present for the life that you're living.
There was a point where, and again, I won't call anybody out, but like there was one of the teenagers that was here for Thanksgiving was so unaware of what was happening in the room that she was like going through Snapchats on her phone and like on full blast volume. And not aware that she was like interrupting conversations, or even if we were just watching a movie, like we can't hear the movie over your Snapchat.
I have seen people do that in doctors' offices. People do it again, like in restaurants, like your YouTube video, you know, like, why do you need to watch YouTube right now? I mean, and in a doctor's office, it's quiet in a doctor's office.
Right.
And there are signs that say like, don't have your cell phone on.
Yeah.
But it's like such a problem.
The thing, and what I know causes the concern and the sadness about it is that you and I both know that the reason for it is because connection, it's not just about them being on their phone. It's about them intentionally avoiding connection with the people that they're in the room
But
with.
this is why this is detrimental, is because the thing that people crave more than they actually crave love is intimacy. People crave intimacy more than they actually crave love itself. People want to be seen, which is why people selfie fucking to death on the internet. People want to be touched. People want to be connected, and they are getting this pseudo connection. And what they don't understand, because most people have no concept of biology or how the body actually works. They just have a body. They don't really know anything about it. So they don't even understand that like every time somebody likes something or shares your stuff or comments, they're like these little dopamine hits. And so what you have to keep doing, because they're just little drips, not like full on dopamine rushes. Like they're these little drips. And so you keep going back. So you keep posting more and you keep sharing more. You keep selfieing because
get addicted.
Absolutely. And do you think that it's accidental that the algorithms share selfies more? Because if your selfie, because you desire it, you want to be seen, but if people more, you get more hits on the selfie So people are now doing more selfies because they notice when they just say something, not as many people comment or like or whatever. And
Yep.
so as long as the selfie gets shared more, then guess what? That means that you're going to come back and you're going to post more, which means you get more and more addicted.
It's too much.
It
It's too much, and
is.
it's so intentional.
Mm-hmm.
We gotta like I try as much as I can, at least with my like what do I want to say? Like not extended family, but like my sisters, my nieces. Like
Mm-hmm.
I try with them. Like even if it means pulling out a board game, which
Yep.
I will say that like we will do. If it's just the 4 or 5 of us here on a weekend, we will pull out a board game or trivia or whatever and just be with each other. I mean, I know your name. I know, our familial relationship, but do I actually know, my nieces, my sisters,
Yep.
without spending time with them, without being in conversation with them and really connecting? I've had conversations now that like I'm in therapy and my sisters and I are just having more conversations about just therapy and healing
Mm-hmm.
and the childhood that we've had. Like, oh my God, like that's who you are. Like really meeting each other for the first time as we're deepening, especially because my little sister, she just turned 21. So she's, of course, a fully grown adult now.
Right.
And we've been having to hear about that all weekend because she turned 21 on the Monday before Thanksgiving.
Oh,
So
so she's
everyone
new
is,
to adulthood.
yes, yes. We are all fully aware that she is grown now.
Yes. Yes.
But now growing into that age, and now we're having conversations more as sisters than as like we previously had more of a parental relationship because I'm
Yeah.
16 years older than she is. And so now we're talking about like her actual life, like who she is becoming as a person. But it's an intentional effort, like we really have to work at that. Like I have to myself, like call her intentionally just to have a conversation about where she is in life.
Yeah.
I have to remember to go beyond texting.
Yes. My daughter is around the same age. My daughter just turned 23, and
Mm-hmm.
the depth that we always had good conversations because that was one of the things that I was most fascinated about, like having a human, is I could not believe like how she could language. Like like
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I still am just as fascinated today as I was when she was like 2. Like, wow, like where do these thoughts come from? So she's capable of like these really deep, profound thoughts, and she has this great self-awareness. So I actually enjoy having conversations with her more so than a lot of people my own age
Yes, I've
because
always
people
felt that
are
way. Yep.
asleep. Like,
Mm-hmm. And I will tell you, these kids these days who are like, I would say like in their 20s and late teens, they have come here knowing something
well,
that.
they also don't have, I think like they are like humans, 2.0. And the reason
Mm-hmm.
is because now as much as technology is also debilitating us, it has
Mm-hmm.
also propelled us so far forward that now the things that our parents or our grandparents were laden with, the millennials don't have that. So now
Mm-hmm.
that there's no reason to be worried about, there's no real reason to worry about survival. Like even if your bills are due and even if you don't have the shit that you like, there is really no reason, not if you live in a first world country, to be
Mm-hmm.
really
Mm-hmm.
worried about your survival. And so consequently, there is all this brain space to ponder. There is all this. That's the reason that fulfillment has now become a desire. Our grandparents didn't give a shit about being happy.
Right, right. They were trying to live.
Right. They didn't give a fuck. What do you mean happy? What does happy have to do with anything? But like now,
Mm-hmm.
now that we are no longer, we don't have to be bogged down by our jobs 12,
Mm-hmm.
18 hours a day. We're not tending the land and spending all of our time with one another. Like now, fulfillment is a core desire that is no longer optional, which is also the reason that there's more depression than there ever has been. There was no time to be depressed. What are you talking about? I ain't got time to
Right.
be sad because this corn got to get shucked. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
yeah. It's like now that we have a choice, now
Yep.
that we can choose a career as opposed to like, if you were a woman, just being a teacher because that's
Hmm.
what was available to you, or being a nurse or a housemaid, that type of thing. Like now we have choice
Hmm.
and we have all of these options on what our purpose could possibly be. That is a lot.
It is. Well, and you can literally, maybe for the first time ever, you can do nothing and not starve to death.
Hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Like before,
Yep.
doing nothing meant certain death. Now you can do nothing and live plush.
I've
Like
seen it happen.
me too. Like I still don't know how, but I do know it's possible.
Right. I'm like, I wish I knew the steps to get there
You know what?
because
Me too.
nothing is the thing I love to do.
Right. It's the one thing I haven't mastered many things, but I tell you what, like
Yes. So, I was having this conversation with a couple recently who had me over for dinner and I had house sat for them. And I was, they were like, oh, did you enjoy the house? Blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, I like this couch and that chair over there. They're like, oh, so what do you do? Like, especially now that I haven't been working full time. I'm like, I sit on the chair, period.
right?
Like I am the master. And they're like, oh, like you read a book or no. I sit on
Mhm.
the chair, like and do not like I hardcore nothing doing. I am an expert at it.
But you know what a gift it is? And I share that same gift, by the way. But do you
Mm-hmm.
know what a gift it is to be able to be with yourself without needing to busy yourself or entertain yourself, but like to just be without automatically thinking that if you're doing nothing, that means you're bored.
Yes.
That's the
Yes.
other problem though with electronics is that children are not developing their boredom muscle. And
Mm-hmm.
because you don't there's no reason to be bored on your cell phone. If there's an app that isn't working or it's frozen, you just swipe it out and go to another one. Or you keep
Mm-hmm.
hitting refresh. Like there is always an action that you can take. So you never, ever, ever are really actually being still.
Yeah. Always stimulated.
Always. The
Yeah.
problem with that is life off the internet does not provide that level of stimulation. Mm-hmm.
This is something that I noticed about myself within the last like couple years is that I am best. I have my clearest thoughts in response to someone or something else.
Me too. That's the
And I've
reason I
started
like
to,
talking to people.
yes. Yes. I'm like this. I mean,
Yep.
the conversations that we have had. Like
Mm-hmm.
if I sat down and tried to write an article about some of the stuff that we had talked about, nothing.
I'm with you. But you know why? Because the brain is designed to connect and expand in communication with other brains.
Yes.
Just like
But
our
see,
skin is designed to be in connection with other, like our neurological system is
mhm.
designed and it cannot thrive or evolve in the absence of another.
Yes. And what is happening is that because of that exact fact, people are replacing because connection with other is not easy,
No, it's not.
right?
It's
It's not
uncomfortable.
easy. It is extremely uncomfortable. Because of that, people are replacing that connection with electronic connection.
Absolutely. Except what they're doing in addition to that, though, is creating depression because
Yes.
connection is not optional.
Yeah.
It is
And that's yeah.
biological.
They're not creating the connection, they're creating the simulation
Hmm.
of the connection.
Absolutely. Which
And
is
so their
not the same.
body is, yes, they're still craving the skin to skin connection. They're still craving the spirit connection, like to a person. But the technology keeps them convinced that, like, oh, if I see this person on Instagram, we're friends.
No, you're not. You just see them on Instagram.
Right. That is not a connection. Like that is not an actual. You're connecting with an image of them, a picture of a slice of their life that might not even actually be a slice of their life.
Mm-hmm.
Like it might just be a slice of what they want you to see on Instagram. Most
Yep.
likely. That's not real. That's
No.
not real. It's one of the reasons why when I am on Instagram, I try to be like in the stuff that I post, I try to be very much in the moment. Like even when you see like in the past week, I did a series of 3 images that I planned out before. And then I did the whole thought experiment on ridges and mountains. Even that content, I planned out those pictures, but the content I wrote in the moment
Yes.
because I didn't want it to be an idea, some abstract thing that I was throwing out at people and not really connecting to the degree that you can online.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want it to feel prepackaged. And so I woke up in the morning, looked at, whatever principle or value it was that I was going to be sharing about that day. And I shared it from the place where I was on that day, which for some of those days was a challenge. But there was a moment towards the end. So I don't know if you know which images I'm referring to, but
I saw them, and I'm not much of a scroller.
Mhm.
I saw them though.
So those images, it was a picture of a mountain and I spread it out over 9 different images. And originally I meant to share one a day. I think it ended up taking me like at least 2 weeks to finally share the whole thing. And it was because I had left the content to share in the moment, to create in the moment. My real life started happening.
Yep.
Like, and my real life was challenging the values that I was putting forth.
Of course.
And so if I had already written it, it would have been fake.
Yep.
I would have been talking about integrity from a perspective of like, oh, let me tell other people what to do, as opposed to my integrity is being challenged today. And
Yep.
here's how I feel about it. And it made me feel so much more connected to the work that I'm doing and to this, like, if you want to call it a message, like what I'm trying to say in my work. I feel so much more connected to it and so much more confident in my ability to speak to other people because I'm not just regurgitating some canned philosophy or whatever that already exists and people have heard a million times. I'm speaking from my experience.
Absolutely. One of the things that's come up for me, it's been coming up and I've been ignoring it for years.
Like we do.
Right?
Like we do.
Is, like I am such a sensual person. Like that is how I live, like all the time. And like when we were talking about earlier, how the best shit comes out of our mouths and the thoughts come in connection and in conversation with other people. And so I'm so good at being alone. I enjoy my own company very much. But I'm so good at being alone. And I have been avoiding trying to grow my business more offline, even though like whenever I have only ever imagined doing group work in person because the work is so sensual and touch is such an important part of sensuality. So, but I consciously avoid social engagement. Because I'm not shy, but I expend a lot of energy and I hold a lot of energy and take on a lot of energy. And so I always am wiped out after I've been in conversation. Even if I have a deep conversation over the telephone, it's the same thing. But 2 weekends ago, the weekend before last, I went to a wine event and I ended up having all these, everywhere I go, I have great conversations anyway. But in all these years that I've been doing this work, I always leave my work out of the conversation, even though the conversation is always about my work. There is no conversation that doesn't include sensuality, period. Like it doesn't exist. But I was very conscious about my conversations and conscious about literally plugging myself. And like, so this week, like I've got 3 potential client follow-ups to do this week, which 3 more than I got after running a whole 30-day challenge on the internet. You know what I'm saying? So missing
the
like
difference of being in the room.
Right. Literally. And knowing, and it's not that this is like new to me. Like,
right.
it's not because I I go deep everywhere I go. Like, it doesn't matter if it's the waiter, it doesn't matter if it's a gas station attendant. I don't know how not to do it. And I always end up having these really great conversations. And again, and then hearing people tell me where their deficits are and knowing that I can help them. So this week I was like, over the weekend, I was like, okay, I'm going to be really conscious about being social on purpose several times a week and getting offline because the connections aren't the same. And one of the reasons I think online that a lot of people, unless you're a coach trying to get other coaches to pay you,
Yep.
because those people stay employed because of people wanting to create without connecting, really. But the truth is that the people online, while they're scrolling, they are easily fooled into thinking that they really don't need to help themselves because there's a meme. You want to help me with relationships? Well, this meme says exactly how I feel.
Right.
Let me passively aggressively post it so my boo can see it, and you know what I'm saying? Like,
yes. Oh my God. I just unfollowed an account yesterday and I forget the name of it, but therapist was in the name of the account. And I follow a few Instagram accounts from legitimate therapists.
Me too. And they post good shit too.
Right. But this one, finally this weekend, I was like, some of the stuff they're sharing is really problematic. Like, I don't feel like an actual thing. Like, while it is funny, it is humorous. It made me laugh. Like, everything I laugh at isn't healthy. And this one account was just more geared towards memes that were about mental illness or things like about depression, about anxiety, but not actual, like more just funny than actual helpful information. And I thought to myself, somebody out there is using this as therapy. Helping on Instagram by following this account and reading through their memes, and their memes are some trash.
Yep.
Or just like a trash mentality. Like, yeah, it's funny. Like, there's one that I read that said, it was something like, it was a conversation and it said, "Oh, you seem really mature and capable." And it was like, "Oh, thanks. It's the trauma."
That's awful. Like,
okay, it's funny. Yeah. But also it's funny because it's true and it's sad.
Right. Because it's true.
Right. And so you're 100% right that, and especially we're in this space where like everyone is an inspirational speaker.
Right.
Everyone is, and I won't even say everyone's a coach because we were in that space. Now we've gone beyond that.
Yes. Yes.
And it's not to say that everyone is doing it wrong or that that's not a great thing. But like, I mean, I met somebody who was selling jewelry. This person's Instagram is all motivational messages. And I'm like, but what does that have to do with, like, what part of your experience in jewelry making now makes you like a low-key therapist?
Right.
But that's the new, like, capitalism will eat everything it touches.
Yep.
And so that's the new way to sell anything, is to be motivational. And people just because it's a pretty meme on Instagram, people take it like somebody out there is like, "Oh yeah, that's right." No, it's not. It's not always right. Like, and it might be right for that person, or it might not even be something that they've applied to their lives. They just like thought of it and put it, like, do you know how easy it is to create a meme?
Oh my goodness. Like, between Google and Canva, you could fill up your whole shit.
Right. With stuff that doesn't apply to anything.
Right.
And so I really, I find myself challenged with that, like, as a coach, as someone who does have things to say that I know and I hope are helpful to other people. I had to, as I've been like re-entering my coaching practice over the last like 3 or 4 months, I really had to deal with myself on that and say, like, okay, there is so much noise out there, but I also can't allow that to distract me.
Yes.
To convince me that what I have to say isn't worth saying. It took a minute. It took a minute, and it wasn't until I met someone who is a minister and also a coach
Mm-hmm.
and had a conversation with her, like something that just clicked in my mind. And I realized that people have been preaching from the same Bible
Yep.
for 2,000 years.
Mm-hmm.
And not all of them were doing it right. Not all of them had actually read that Bible.
Look, and that's still true.
Still true today. Not all of them were doing it to be helpful. Some of them were doing it to be helpful, but didn't have the education that they needed or the experience that they needed.
Mm-hmm.
But on the same level, there's a church on every corner, and there's a person in that church who is being helped by the message that's being preached there.
And that's real.
And so, yeah. And so if that is possible, then I can talk as much as I need to about self-care and mindfulness, the things that many people are using as a part of their platforms. The people who need to hear it from me will hear it. And the people who need to hear it from them will hear it. And I just say, God bless the ones who are listening to the memes that don't make any sense. Hopefully it sends them down a path where they figure it out. Because this is the wild, wild west right now.
It's the best and the worst. You know what I mean? It's like the best and the most awful, because it's great that there is so much, that there is a plethora of different modalities for whatever you need. Your flavor is available. That is fucking fantastic. And I'm grateful that now, there's more than one way for people, that maybe therapy isn't their jam, but maybe Reiki is, or maybe Reiki isn't your thing, but maybe, body movement, yoga helps you to ground. I'm glad that there are all these different things available at the same time. And maybe it just feels like that because, from the coaching space, we also see how many people aren't doing what they need to do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it seems like now that people have all this available to them, the people that were not likely to ask for help in the first place now are feeling like they don't need to.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. It's not that the more information we have out there about self-care, the better off people are.
Yeah.
Not at all. It's just more information floating out there to cover up what the actual problems are.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Because self-care is a solution.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't know what the problem is, then you don't know to apply it.
Absolutely. It's fascinating and ridiculous.
I mean, this is why ridiculous is spot on. And it's why, I really try to come from a place of critical thought. I think I posted something on Instagram recently and said, I don't even really jive with the title of teacher for myself.
Me either.
That's not
I don't jive with coach either.
Coach, I struggle with coach.
Yeah. I've been struggling for years too. Yeah.
For so many reasons. The industry itself, people's misunderstanding. Actually, I struggle with any title.
Yep. I just, for all, as much as I can, I'll just say I'm the creator of the Sensuality Project.
Yeah.
That's that whole thing, whatever you think that is.
Right. But that's the reason, really, that's what got me motivated to start sharing more about the message that I have is I'm rather than me trying to put a title on it, I just need to get out there and say it and let people figure out what it is for themselves. And if they like it, call me. But getting stuck on the label of coach or even the label of being a yogi or whatever it is, labels challenge me because it triggers people's preconceptions of what you're talking about. Absolutely. And it blocks connection.
So much because people then start, especially people that are natural skeptics, they then start picking apart the ways that you aren't that thing.
Right. And that's what when I think about being called a teacher or whatever label, it's not a sense of I'm not being modest. It's not that I don't believe in the message that I have or think that I can teach people. I think that I'm a born teacher. Talk to anybody who has known me since I was 7. All I've ever talked about is being a teacher. But in this space, the best teachers know exactly how to deliver a lesson in the way that their student is going to receive it.
I agree. And that's true in and out of the real education system. Because that's one of the reasons that is so many kids that come out thinking that they're dumb or that they can't learn. And then they grow up to be multi-million-dollar business people.
Yes. So, and in that, and I said also, that's why I get knocked over the head so many times with the experience that I have in my life, is because that's how I learn.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Until I decide that I'm going to learn in a different way, then the universe that created me and therefore is the best teacher and knows how I learn is going to continue to knock me over the head.
Yep.
That's what's going to happen. And so as a teacher, as someone who is a teacher myself, I feel that where we are in time and space right now is that people do not need gurus.
I agree with you completely.
Yeah. And it's not just me saying it. This is what the Dalai Lama himself is saying.
Well, that's why so many of them are getting overthrown right now.
And the ones who aren't are the ones who are surrendering it themselves, like the Dalai Lama. Like if you listen to, there was a book with the Dalai Lama and Desmond Tutu. But any of these like people who are still living and currently respected as gurus or as, these magnificent teachers, they are all in some part of their message saying, we are not at the point where you need an external guru anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And so for that reason, a lot of what I do is asking people questions and encouraging their own critical thought, right? So that no matter who they're talking to, who they're looking at on Instagram, what message they're getting from anybody, whether it's me or somebody else, they know how to process that for themselves, whether that fits for them. Or are they just going along with it because it's on a pretty Instagram picture?
Exactly. Question everything. Like I don't
ideas.
Like, I don't like, I as much as I like writing, I like question marks much more than periods.
Mm-hmm.
Question. Yes. I didn't even come to that realization until I'm fighting against myself to finish this book I've been working on forever this year. And my character said it last week.
Oh, I love that.
And I was like, damn, that is good. And I was like, and that's true for me.
Mm-hmm.
Is that I really like question marks. Like I could ask why endlessly. Yes. But it's that, and that's the thing that I think is missing in that's the thing that's disappearing from human connection, especially because people are pouring out too much of themselves in a lot of cases online, is that people are not curious about people anymore. Like when people tell me stories and I'll say, well, did you ask them why? Or what did they think about this? And the answer is, I didn't ask. I can never, how did you not ask?
Right.
That seems like the next logical question. When they said this, your next logical thing is to ask this.
Right.
But
no,
people are
not
questions? Right.
No.
People are not curious. And it's so interesting. I was out someplace and I was asking, it was like, so whoever was providing me a service, and somebody was like, why did you ask that? Like, and I was like, because I wanted to know. And guess what? People actually want to be known. And so even though like sometimes I will ask what might seem to someone else as a deeply personal question, and they might think like, you're being nosy. No, I'm actually not. I'm only asking because I actually want to know. And guess what? They tell me because they actually want me to know, even if they never see me again, because people are not being curious. People are not inquisitive about one another. And I just don't think that you can, even if intimacy lasts for 2 minutes, you cannot have intimacy without curiosity. You cannot.
Not at all.
But
no,
it's
there's
the
no
thing
space
that's
for
missing.
it.
No, how could there possibly be? And how could the other person, how could someone feel safe to be naked if you're not curious about them? Because I really like, I can't connect with someone that I don't feel is interested in me, which is not the same as finding me interesting. I have a lot of interesting shit to say, but that doesn't matter to me. I don't care how interesting you think my mind is. I need to know that you are interested in me. And if you're interested in me, then I am willing to be vulnerable with you.
Yes. Because otherwise, why do it?
Right.
Like, why just be sitting in front of someone, vomiting information about yourself, being vulnerable, or even just sharing interesting stories or interesting information that you have if they're not interested? If they're just
Absolutely.
sitting there waiting for their turn to talk or trying to feign intimacy, which,
Mm-hmm.
oh my gosh, I've learned, like, I think I knew about people being fake. Like, I knew about that as a concept.
Yeah.
But I have never experienced it so deeply in my life as I have over the past 2 years. And like almost as a study of it, like, because I guess most fake people in my life, I've been able to just eject them from my life
Mm-hmm.
and to just not be around them. Like, oh, I see that we're not going to reach a certain level of intimacy here. And so I'm moving on to the next person, the next possibility for that. But being in a space where those same people present themselves to me over and over and over again, and really seeing the depth of disconnection with themselves that creates that fakeness, that creates this like desire to say that you're in relationship, but not actually be in relationship.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And all of the deep, dark places that comes from, it has blown my mind wide open.
Well, especially because the people that you experienced that with were also donning the label of spirituality.
Yes, and living in their bodies.
Yes.
And yes, yes. And I'm like, the disconnection, like for me, and I think that you and I have talked about this before, like the way that my brain works and just the person that I am, the way that I am created in authenticity, someone who is disconnected from themselves literally sounds like static to me. In conversation with them, I can hear the words that they're saying, but it's like a different language because my mind, my body, my soul, whatever it is that is listening, all of those things that are listening cannot deal with the disconnection between them and themselves. Like, not because if you can't be connected to yourself, you definitely can't connect to me.
Yeah. How could you?
It's physically like impossible for you to make connection with somebody else if you're disconnected from yourself.
Absolutely. It's like trying to make a phone call without having the phone plugged into the jack.
Correct.
Like, who are you calling? No one. Like,
yeah.
You're pushing buttons and got the phone to your ear. Nothing's going to happen.
When I tell you that, like, this has blown my mind, like, because I've never had to deeply interact with people who are this way or have this barrier. And so in doing it, I have learned that, like, because, I'm processing it as a person who is connected and who does want to be connected. So I'm like, okay, if this person says that they want to talk to me, that means let's talk or let's set up a time to talk. Let's make that happen. And learning that, like, oh, actually, that just means that they want to say that they want to talk to me. And like that it doesn't take any, like, so I'm like trying to avoid this person who wants to talk to me when in actuality, I don't have to do anything because they're just saying it. They don't actually want to have a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And so it doesn't have to cost me anything in my life to say, oh yeah, girl, call me.
Right.
Because the call is never going to come. When I realized how much energy I could save by not resisting that and just saying, sure, if you want to talk about this, just give me a call on Tuesday. I will clear my whole schedule for you because it's never going to happen. Because that person isn't connected with what they want. Like, it is so, but it's bizarre to me. But the first time it happened, I was like, oh my, I could have saved myself 3 months of fighting with this person if I just said, okay, fine, sure, yes, and really having to deal with myself on, okay, for me, that feels dishonest in the beginning. For me, it feels like, okay, if this person is saying that they want to have this relationship with me, I'm agreeing to that, then when I really don't want to have that, it makes it feel dishonest to me. But really, it's like dealing with people that are speaking a whole different language, like literally. Like, I'm not going to go to France and talk to somebody who only speaks French and try to force them to understand English. At some point, I just have to say, okay, this is the language you speak. So let me figure out how to work within this. And so really having to figure out how to be with people who aren't with themselves in a way that still feels like integrity to me, but also saves me the energy of fighting against a thing that I cannot change about them, which is everything about them, you know. It was a journey. It was a journey of finding that balance.
I don't know why I'm still finding this challenging, but because I at this point I really shouldn't. But I still find it so challenging to be with people who don't know how to really relate. Like, and these are not, I'm not like talking about people that have like, social deficiencies. Like these are people by looking at them and engaging with them, they appear to have all of the necessary ingredients for relation and connection, but they really are not interested in having relationships. And the worst part is that those people also seem to be the people that have these really high expectations of engagement from other people.
Yes. And you know what? That takes us back to the cell phone conversation.
Right. Right.
Because they want to be engaged. They want to be stimulated so that they don't have to sit with themselves.
It's annoying.
Even people who are helping people, and it's another meme that I just saw on Instagram. I think maybe it was something, a tweet or something, but it nailed it. This idea that like people who dedicate their lives to serving others, of course, that can be very genuine. That can be someone's calling in life. It can also be a response to trauma.
Yes. It's almost a lot of the time a response to trauma.
Yes. And so that they're spending more time focused on other people. And some spiritual teachers will advocate for this. Mm-hmm. And I think that they mean to be doing a good thing, but they're missing out on the specificity of it. Mm-hmm. That they will advocate for, just don't worry about yourself. Just serve others. And it's once you've done a certain amount of work, that can be fruitful. But if you are ignoring yourself and suppressing your emotions, ignoring the places where you are broken or wounded, however you want to refer to it, if you're ignoring the shadow sides of yourself and just trying to serve others, in that service to them, you're projecting your own bullshit onto them. That's not connection. That's not service. That's not helping anybody if you haven't dealt with yourself. And so I think that there are a lot of people who, even really good people, who come from a perspective of they just don't want to deal with themselves, again, because it's difficult, because it's uncomfortable. And so they don't connect. And it's like, it is a challenge for me, but also I feel a little bit differently about it now because I have experienced so many types of, what's the word I want to use? I don't want to say dysfunction, but like so many just different ways of being, different ways that a person can be. And specifically different ways that a person can be hurt or wounded. That now when I see someone who has an inability to connect, I have more compassion for it. Because even if it's not one of the, 57 flavors of woundedness that I've seen, it might be the 58th.
Yeah.
And understanding that, like, as tough as it is for me to interact with that person, they're struggling just as much, and it does mean this is where the boundaries come into play, right? Mm-hmm. That, like, I can know that and I can be compassionate for it. I can love them from the moon to the stars. It does not mean I have to be around them.
Absolutely. And I think that right there is probably the ultimate act of self-love. And that's also the thing that people that are wounded and haven't done any work, that's the place that they struggle to get to. And because in order for you to to put distance between yourself and something that causes you pain, you have to be aware that the pain is something that you do not have to experience.
Yes. Or that you do not want.
Mm-hmm. Well, but this is what I've come to learn. I knew it theoretically, and I've seen it because I've said a bazillion times that a lot of people don't necessarily want to feel good. They just don't want to feel bad. But the flip side of that is some people actually want to feel bad because they're afraid of feeling good.
Yeah.
And then the third part is that some people want to feel bad because that's the only way they can feel.
That's all they know.
Yep. I mean, pain is grounding. Like pain is grounding. And interestingly enough, I came to that, like to like be able to really see how pain was grounding through kink. Is that that you, first of all, there is, I can't think of a single act of kink, and it might be the very definition that doesn't include pain or humiliation. And of course, humiliation is an emotional pain. And the part of it is that because kink is a great way to work through your shadow shit. For people that judge that, like, it's a great way to work through your shadow shit because you are in the discomfort, even if the discomfort is arousing to you. Like you're in the discomfort. But at first, and I don't personally have any known kinks. But I am happy to participate in other people's kinks. So I don't have any known kinks, but in being with other people's kinks, I realize, because it's like, well, why would you, if that hurts, why would you want to do that? Because me personally, if it hurt, I ain't fucking with that. Right? Me personally. But then it's like, oh, but this is arousing to you because pain is the only way for you to stay in the room.
Yes.
Because if it doesn't hurt, you can't be in here. You're time traveling, you're somewhere else, you're thinking about what just happened or what's going to happen. You're never here. But if it hurts, you can't leave.
But check this out, though. How much more healthy is it to do that through kink, which is a controlled experience that you can start and stop, rather than doing that with your everyday life? Doing that with people that don't even know that they're participating in it.
Well, this is what I think that those become the people that kink becomes their everyday life. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, because exactly what you just described, like this idea of pain is the only thing that you can feel. And so you put yourself in a situation where you're going to feel pain, seeking pleasure. How often do women do that with entire romantic relationships?
Oh, all the time. And I just heard a story about a man who's doing that in this relationship with this woman. And he had a previous relationship where, I don't want to give too much away in case any of them listen, but he had a previous relationship that went really as bad as a relationship could go, ending in the other person's death. And not at his hand and not by his fault. So he didn't kill the person or nothing. But consequently, because of the guilt that he carries around that, because of that guilt, and he's now in a long-term relationship with someone that verbally and emotionally abuses him all the time, even in the company of others. Because there's a part of him that feels like he deserves to be emotionally beat, which is not different than being spanked. Until your ass is blistered. You know what I'm saying? It's not different. It's just the modality is different, but it's not different. Again, because that humiliation and that continual, being rooted in the pain is easier than working through and saying, like, I do not have to pay penance for the rest of my life for whatever the thing is.
That's a tough one. That's like getting people to be in touch with themselves enough to recognize what is pain, and then to take the step to say, oh, I want this pain to end. And then they got to figure out how to do it. Look, like that's a lifetime. That's a
Oh yeah.
lifetime.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, humans are so fascinating. Humans are so fascinating. And like I don't have any kinks. So I would never try to explore my shit sexually because that's not my thing. Like
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that happens to not be my jam. I can also find someone's response to pain extremely pleasurable. Now, not in the fact that they're actually being hurt, but when the hurt creates arousal in the other person, their turn on becomes my turn on. So it's not that
Right.
I actually have the kink, which I didn't know that about myself.
Yeah, I find that well, I should say almost anything that arouses the other person, like
Mhm.
I'm aroused by their being aroused.
Yes. Yes, that is me. And
Yeah.
a lot of people, particularly people that identify as men, they struggle
Mhm.
with that because they want you to say they want something they're doing to you to be your turn on. You know what I
Mm.
mean? But my witnessing, but it's the same fulfillment I get from giving somebody a gift, or the same
Right.
fulfillment you get from when you're coaching someone and you see the pieces fit together and they have an aha. That shit is great for you.
It's exactly the same.
But I think that it's
Yep.
like the way that we are designed as humans, especially if you're in tune with yourself, is to experience sympathetic pleasure. Just like we experience sympathetic pain. Like how often do you well up watching something on television? That ain't happening to
Yeah.
you?
Yes. And they've done studies where they have like measured our internal response to something that is actually happening to us
Mhm.
and our response to something that's happening to another person. And it's the same. So that, like, the ability to basically empathy, like
Yep.
that, the capacity for empathy that human beings have, it can be through pleasure, it can be through connection and friendships, it can be
Yeah.
through even watching a movie and just seeing positive things happen. Or, we also have to just be mindful that the negative is the same. So if we're seeing people in pain, if we're watching movies that are gruesome, whatever, like we're experiencing that in the same way.
Yeah.
Those neurons that fire in our brain and make us think that we're experiencing that emotion, they don't stop because, oh, it's just TV. Or,
Absolutely.
this is a whole other tangent, but I have been really conscious of what I take in terms of entertainment. And I like, a wide variety of things. Like I love a good like drug cartel TV series,
Mhm.
you know. However, once I realized that connection and that my mood will change based on what I'm watching. Like
Yes.
I was watching Jane the Virgin. I binge watched it for a couple weeks. And it's a satire of a telenovela,
Mhm.
which is like as dramatic as telenovelas are, it's even more dramatic than that to poke fun at it.
Wow.
Right. And so I realized that during the span of time that I was watching that, my life felt more dramatic. Like I
Mm.
was responding to situations in my real life in a more dramatic way. Like it lines up with, that's why I had to be very careful about what I'm watching and what I'm taking in. Because if I'm watching, what is it, Queen of the South, which is about, a woman who runs drugs and whatever, like that's going to affect, that energy lives on in my body the same way that if I decide to take a break and watch something funny. And
Yeah.
so it's all about laughter and, playful, just being really careful. Like it's a big reason why I don't seek entertainment that
Mhm.
often, because that is putting stuff into me. Whereas, at least in recent times, my process has been about taking stuff out, like
Yeah.
taking out the things that have been barriers to me and where I really want to be using my energy and my time. And so, soaking up TV shows and whatever kind of music that's out here, like I got to be careful about what I take in.
I'm also particularly careful with people. Like there are just certain people.
Yes.
Look, I be really trying not to disclose people's name when I be talking, but but there are certain people that, might be a friend of someone else that I know that I'm like, don't invite me if that person is coming because they're inauthentic or because they're, very superficial. And I cannot listen to somebody talking about bullshit, at length. I just can't.
Nope. I will get up and walk out of the room.
Right? It's just like, who finds this interesting? And it's interesting. Like I have a couple of friends that I like and I enjoy them as people, but I struggle to communicate with them because they really can't go beyond small talk. And unfortunately, I don't suck at I do suck at a lot of things, but small talk is one of the things I suck at extremely bad at. I'm really terrible at it. So I, as much as, and those people tend to be the ones that want to communicate with me a lot. And, I'm trying to be nice at the same time. Right. What I really want to say is, you really don't talk about shit.
Right. Right. Yes. And those are the ones who will want to engage you.
Yes.
Because they also, they know they're not talking about shit.
Yep.
They know that. They see the depth of conversation that you and I may have, but they may not know how to get there. And so they keep coming to us over and over and over again, like, oh, how's your day?
Yeah. And it's just like, okay, it's the same as it was when you asked me earlier today.
Right. Yes.
Like not much has changed. Or they ask you, and then when you go into detail, because don't ask me how I'm doing if you really don't want to know. Right. So like once I go into detail, and then all you got is, oh, okay.
Right. Because they have no idea what to do with the connection.
At all. It's
a process.
Yeah. So I'm trying to, I don't like discard those people. Because again, they're people that I enjoy. They're genuinely good people. And I love, I have one friend in particular, like, I don't know if I've met a more generous spirit in my life. Like he's so kind. But I'm like, you ain't got shit to talk about. Like, but I'm also really, and you can tell me if you have this challenge, like, cause I'm also trying not to just surround myself with people that do like all the things and are able to talk the way that I am, because I don't want to put myself in a bubble that then makes me, then I live in a vacuum where I am then stifling my own growth because I haven't diversified my own soil.
That is very true. And I've noticed that, so I experience that same thing, that same desire to make sure that my circle is diverse. And for me, it's about keeping my mind open, especially as an introvert.
Yeah.
As someone who doesn't typically reach out to others, keeping my mind open to intentionally do that so that I'm not missing opportunities, or so that I don't slip into a place where I'm putting people into boxes without having actually interacted with them.
Yeah. It's a struggle. It's a struggle.
Yeah. Yeah. But the other thing is that, like, I think what helps me with that is that I am truly interested in everyone.
Yes. Yes.
So, like, if I can pull out of them more than just the small talk, if I can get to a place, and like you said earlier, people want to be heard. They want to be seen. They want to tell you their stories.
Yeah.
So if I can get someone to talk about what they care about, I don't care. I had a friend recently who liked to talk about trees. I like to look at trees. I don't need to know the scientific name for all of them.
Oh, look, but I would love your friend.
Yes. But I would listen to it because that was the thing that he was passionate about. When he was sharing that, he was sharing a part of himself. Yeah. And so I'm like, okay, I'll listen to tree names all day long. If I can get to that place with anyone, regardless of what their views are, regardless of where, like what their interest is, if we can get to that place, like I can listen to anybody talk.
Yes.
And truly be interested and engaged with it.
Absolutely. You know what? One of the things that helped me recently was one of my core desired feelings had been nourished. The problem with the EDs though, and in that one was that meant, and I didn't realize it because that had been one of my core desired feelings for probably at least the last 12 months, if not longer. And what I realized in doing that and reaffirming to myself every fucking day, right? Like
Yep.
that I desire to be nourished in my connection was that meant that I was unconsciously going into most of my connections with an empty plate, expecting someone else to put food on it.
Yes.
And when I switched it to nourishing, then that created space for me with like the few people in my life that I don't necessarily feel fed when I go into conversation. It allowed me to instead bring emotional or nourishment to them as opposed to me going with the expectation that they need to nourish me.
Correct. And that's so important. Like in terms of the core desire feelings or vision boards or even when, I've done a lot of reading recently on nonviolent communication, like what people have to acknowledge and the ways that we interact with one another is that you have to own your shit.
Yes. Yes.
And so if you want nourishment, that has to start and end with you. If you feel, like someone might say, like, I feel disrespected. Well, you got to dig deeper. Own your shit. Actually voice what you need, what you desire, and what part of that isn't being met from your perspective. And it's not to say that people don't do disrespectful things, but in addressing it, you have to own that you have a desire for people to acknowledge your intelligence. You have a desire for whatever it is, like starting from that place rather than just pointing the finger and saying, like, I need this from you.
Yeah.
And it's difficult.
It is. One of the best ways to get a look at yourself is to be in relationship with somebody that gets on your nerves, which is hard.
Oh, girl.
Which is hard. It is. It's exceptionally hard. But the reason why it's important, especially if it's someone that gets on your nerves, but they genuinely don't try to get on your nerves. There are people that don't really care about getting on your nerves. But someone like I have a lover that when I tell you, Raven, I don't know if anybody has annoyed me to the point that he annoys me.
Oh, wow.
But, I have also never seen somebody who is so committed, even though he falls short very regularly. He is so committed to owning his stuff and making change that he, like the other day we were talking and I was like, okay, you can't say stuff like that to people. And so he was like, well, how should I say it? And once I said it, he said, wait a minute. And he literally went back and got a recorder and he was like, can you say it again? Because that's how committed he is that he wanted to capture it so that he could listen to it, so that he could reshape the way his approach to try, because it was about like getting somebody to honor something for him. But the way he was presenting it, even if people were, because people that care about you want your well-being is important. But if you're being a jackass, you move them in the space of not giving a fuck about what you're going through.
Right.
You know what I mean? But he's like so committed to like evolving and being better that he routinely makes notes and is checking himself on a regular basis. But when I tell you the irritation.
And I feel you on that. And I want to talk about discomfort versus pain, because this is a distinction that I don't think that many people make on a regular basis. They kind of skirt over it so that they can stay within their comfort zone.
Yep.
So that annoyance that you're talking about is discomfort.
Absolutely. And sometimes it's very intense.
Right. Now, you know very well what is painful for you. And so you make a decision to continue to deal with that person because it is still in the zone of discomfort and not pain. It
Absolutely.
would be very easy for somebody to be in a relationship, and whether it's an intimate relationship, or I should say a sexual relationship, or another type of intimate
Mm-hmm.
relationship, people can get in that space of like, oh, this person annoys me, and so I'm just going to discard them
Yes.
because that's uncomfortable, or they will think that that's painful. They'll think,
Mm-hmm.
oh, this person's hurting me, and so I need to stay from around them. But really, it's not actually pain; it's just discomfort.
Absolutely. And well, and the person, if it's discomfort and not pain, then there's an offering in it, because
Yes.
like some of the ways that I haven't shared even with him, that he has pushed me to the edge, like there were some intimacy barriers that I had that I was aware that I had, especially when someone, like instinctively, if someone is annoying enough, my instinct is to begin withholding love from them because they get on my nerves. Like, that's my instinct. But when someone is persistent in the way that they not only they want to do better, and
Mm-hmm.
they want to be fully aware of what they're doing, because they are also aware that they cannot see their own face, so they can only see it reflected through the eyes of someone else. And then like the ways that he has pushed me in my own like intimate, like one of the things, like once we were out, because again, like I was really struggling to navigate this space of discomfort with him, because again, like I'm not different than anybody else. You get on my nerves long enough and I want to kick rocks fast, right?
Yes.
So that's my instinct also. But we were
Mm-hmm.
we were like out, and he was saying something to me, and I was actually saying to him that one of the things, because one of my friends asked me, well, what is it that gets on your nerves so much about him? And I had never summarized it in one word, and the word was entitlement. And so I was expressing that to him, is that I said, you have an entitlement about you that bothers me. But while I was saying it, I realized I was putting space between us, physical space between us.
Uh-huh.
He kept saying, why do you keep moving? And he kept moving closer. And so one of the things that he unconsciously does, look, and I hope he don't listen to this. But one of the things that he unconsciously does, like if we're talking, like sometimes like we'll be talking in the kitchen, and I was conscious about not entering his kitchen, because the kitchen is an intimate space for me. And I didn't feel emotionally safe with him. So he would always make me food, and he would be standing in the kitchen, and I would be standing in like on the other side of the bar. Like, so we're separated by a wall, but I could like reach through the bar area. But whenever the first time he did it, he asked me a question, and he was on one side, and I moved to the farthest side of the bar. And he said, I realize you're putting space between us. And he moved over, and I didn't say anything. But now he's taken it a step further. Now, if we start talking about something in depth, he leaves the kitchen and comes over to my side. And so, and I said to him, you don't even, because he's like, I've learned and I've grown a lot, in being in relation with you. And I said, you don't even know how you have stretched me, because I haven't told you, but you have, because he closes where my instinct is to pull away. He closes the physical space and forces me to be uncomfortable. But I would not be, if I just invested all my time with people that are easy, and then I wouldn't ever have to grow those parts of myself, because I've been doing that for a long time. I've been putting physical space between me and discomfort for a long time, and aware of it for a long time.
Between me and discomfort.
Right?
Like literally leave an entire state like, nope, don't want to be there. I'm out. And that is like, and exactly what you said earlier, the discomfort, the reason to endure the discomfort is that there's a gift in it. There is a lesson there. There is something about you that you can learn by continuing to be uncomfortable. That's very different from abuse, right?
Yes.
Because I've been in abusive situations where people know exactly what is going to hurt me and continue to do that thing over and over again, right? That's not a situation where I will stay. we have to get clear about what those boundaries are for ourselves, because
Absolutely.
the flip can happen where you are in an abusive relationship or an abusive situation and you think that it's just discomfort.
Mm-hmm.
And so you got to take care of yourself, but understanding the difference between those two so that you're continuing to stretch yourself. Because again, the way that we see ourselves best is through the eyes of another person or through interaction with another person. Like, I have learned, when I tell you the number of people who have annoyed me over the past 2 years, I have grown so much. I've learned so much about myself because I was willing to encounter every situation from the perspective of a witness, and a participant. So I'm in the situation, but I can also step back and say and acknowledge how I'm responding and why,
Which
and
is
really
huge.
process. Yeah, like you it's one thing to, like, most people are just disconnected from the situation entirely. And then the next step is to actually be in the moment, but then to also be in the moment, but to be able to process what's happening in the moment really is where self-growth happens. Because I can start to acknowledge my patterns. I can start to see that, like, oh, this annoyance that I feel, I remember this. I remember this feeling, and I remember that it typically leads to learning.
Yeah.
Right. And so let me sit with it. Let me stay in this moment that is uncomfortable until I figure out what it has for me, and not just leave it because it itches.
Absolutely.
And there has been, like, I wish I could think of a example that I could tell without using somebody's name. But like I mean, I've been in a place where common sense was just very different, like not
Yeah.
common sense. Where, like, the joke amongst people who think more logically is that, like, if you're trying to get something done, you think of the most logical way to do it and then throw that out, because that's clearly not the answer. And so working through situations where people are very disconnected with themselves, but think that they are connected, think that they're living in their body and very connected to spirit, and trying to do very logical things, has been, for me, a person who is more logical, is more of a thinker, has been a heart opening experience. Having to come out of my mind, sometimes lose my mind, figuratively and literally losing my mind in order to do very small things on a daily basis, in order to get meals out and to, like, just do the things that we do repetitively every week, to get those things accomplished with people who don't have a sensor for logic, was an annoyance. But also, because I know that logic is the place where I typically sit, it was an incredible opportunity for me to, as long as it was not hurting, which eventually it was, but in the time when it was not hurting, to sit with that discomfort, to sit with the annoyance and change the story from, oh my God, these people get on my nerves, or, oh my God, they're so stupid, why don't they know how to do anything, to, how can I process this differently? How can I come out of my mind and into my heart and into my body, regardless of what they're doing, right? Because they're going to be who they are for the rest of their lives. That's them. But I know that I can take that opportunity to improve myself, to not even improve, but to come into myself, to remove the layers that are blocking my deeper connection, and just really, like, sit with that opportunity over the course of some truly ridiculous situation.
Talking about, that's accelerated growth right there.
Oh yeah. Oh, I always, anybody that asked me, like, I would sit with people who were coming through for the weekend, like just as guests or whatever. And of course, they're always impressed that you live there. Like, oh my God, you get to live here all the time. And they think that they think it's heaven on earth. And, oh, it must be so wonderful. And I am like, yeah, yep. But remember this, just like in this weekend where you have had a great time and you have relaxed, but you've also struggled with something, right? Imagine that every single day.
Yeah.
That's what living in that place is like. That is the accelerated growth that you get. And I mean, there is certainly a part of it that is mystical, and that is just about like the energy that exists on that land. But a part of it also is just having to see the same people at least 3 times a day.
Yeah, which can
Because
be a lot.
yes, if you beef with somebody at a regular job and you can go to your cubicle and maybe you'll see them again later on this week, then you'll process that situation, but it might take a week. It might take 2 weeks. But if you're beefing with somebody who, if you want to eat 3 times a day, you're going to see them 3 times a day, you process that shit real quick.
Yep.
It is a masterclass in spiritual development and growth at a very rapid pace, if you allow it to be. Because it's also a good place to stay stuck in your shit.
Yeah. That's what I was going to ask you. Like, do you find it challenging? Because this is something I still struggle with. Letting go. Like once you've been at odds with someone and you like maybe you've talked through it and even but maybe it doesn't necessarily feel resolved to you. Or even if it does, but you still feel some kind of way, like do you struggle with the letting go after you both have agreed that it's squashed, but it's still like
Stacey, here is my best kept secret, and I'm gonna say it even though I know that this is public. I am petty as fuck. Do I struggle with letting stuff go? Girl.
Oh, that was great.
I mean, ridiculous. Like, if I acted on 25% of my thoughts, I would be in jail. Yes, I absolutely have challenges with letting go. However, and so I'm going to think of a specific situation without giving too many details. There was a situation in my job where I was in conflict with one of my coworkers who I actually needed to interact with on a relatively regular basis. We beefed for a long time, to the point where like it started off with me just like, I can tell somebody I don't like from jump, right? So it started off with me seeing that I wasn't going to like her and trying to stay away. And again, that's not possible in this environment. So she eventually picked up on the fact that I was trying not to be around her. And that spiraled into a whole thing in her head. And I know this now after we've dealt with it. That spiraled out of control into a whole, like she had a whole story created about why I didn't like her and that whatever. And I was like, no, I was just trying not to be around you. Like I hadn't even learned enough to really not like her. And so we like beefed on some work stuff for like a good, like over a year. Eventually when we realized we couldn't avoid each other, we just started butting heads. Eventually she did something to me that like literally broke my heart. Like all the other petty stuff aside, like I described it to her as a trauma. Like it felt like a trauma to me. And so I was done. I was like, all right, like now I don't have to give a shit about this person. I can wipe her from my entire like acknowledgement of human beings because there's no way we're ever coming back from this situation. And then she reached out and asked me to talk. From that place where I was not giving a fuck, I felt like I could then say whatever I wanted to say. And so I said all the things to her that I had not been saying for the year and a half that we had known each other. And that was the conversation that shifted our relationship. Now, still after that conversation, we had to wait a little while and have a whole other conversation. And like, I'm talking hours and hours of working on a relationship that I didn't even think that I wanted at the time, but just like, this just doesn't feel good in my spirit. Like it had gotten to the point where it just felt like something I had to cleanse from my spirit.
Yeah.
And so after we had our real conversation, I even left the room saying like, oh, for all the times that you had been saying, let's leave the past in the past. Like now we actually can. Like now we're on a level. But the moment I stepped out of the room, I didn't feel like that. I was still like, oh, she think I'm gonna forget. she think I'm gonna forget what she said? Like, nah. And like, so in my head, there was still this residual, like, okay, she can think that we're being nice now, but I'm still really not feeling her. And it took several more interactions where I just like, because mind you, that point where we had this deep conversation was really the beginning of our interaction. Even though we had been talking at each other for a very long time, that was the beginning of us actually connecting with each other. And so it was from that point on that I actually started to have compassion for her, that I actually started to listen to the things that she was saying, see the different ways that she was hurting, and just process things in a different way. Months have passed now, and I'm finally like, oh, okay, she's cool. Like, am I going to go and party with her? Probably not. Like, what we did, we came to terms with the fact that, like, though we have many things in common socially, nothing.
Yeah.
So like we are looking for a different quality of friendship. So like we're never going to be buddy buddy. But could I get past that trying to avoid her or struggling with her or and being in conflict with her? Yeah, it took some time. It
Yeah.
took a lot of time.
Yeah.
I'm letting go is my forever journey.
Yeah. I haven't had a lot of experiences where that something got me to the place where I struggled with it. But I have had that experience a couple of times with other women in particular. And the most recent experience was earlier this year, and I was definitely traumatized. Like it like jarred my whole system for like probably almost a month, where like my nervous system was like fucked up.
Yeah.
Like that was like
Yep.
I can't, and even once there was a conversation, and the other person felt slighted by me. But and what happened is the other person had been like keeping a storehouse of things for a long time.
Yeah.
And then when they got triggered by this one experience, decided to vomit the entire chest of things they had been storing
Yes.
on me at one time. And like I couldn't sleep. My stomach was like messed up from eating. Like it really fucked my whole nervous system up. And so when I did, I made a conscious effort, like, let's talk about it. And we did have a conversation, and it still wasn't sitting well. And because at that point, in that particular instance, I just didn't think that it was healthy. Like, it was like, if someone says that they love you and then they store up a whole bunch of things and use them as like ammunition on you when you already are wounded, like, that
don't feel like love.
No, that's not love. Like, because it's like, I don't like that sounds like a war strategy to me. And not all instances are like that, but it's like, I don't want to be in relation with somebody that I'm worried that they are like, they're storing up ammunition so that when they do have to launch, they can maim me and impair me for, you know what I'm saying? Like,
right. Yeah.
but
What I think about that situation where this person is storing up negative things, negative thoughts, perceptions about you. Again, going back to this idea of all the different ways that people are hurting. I think that is a person who does not know what hurts them, who does not know what makes them uncomfortable, but their body knows. So they store up those experiences. And it's not until someone lights the fuse that their body remembers all of the things that have been painful for them or that have created separation for them. And so it's not necessarily that they have been like taking notes, but their body has been taking notes. But their mind, their consciousness, I think many people are unaware of even just the things that they don't like about people. They don't even recognize that they get to choose what they like and what they don't like, and therefore who they're around and who they aren't. And so they just go
No,
through
Raven, not this person. Like, because the reason I say that, I hear what you're saying. And if it had been someone else, I would agree. This particular person, this was a pattern. Is that this was somebody that was at odds with other people all the time, and that was in the habit of divorcing people from their life on a regular basis. Like one of those people that in a relationship, like, is talking about they walking away and leaving like weekly, you know, to the point where even in that, I was like, you know, if you're going to be with this person, you're going to have to stop doing that. You're going to have to stop saying that you've done every 5 minutes.
Right.
Like that was a pattern. So it was one of those things though. And this is a thing that I have not mastered, because it has come up in my life so many times, is that when someone presents themselves, and usually they tell you who they are, and they also tell you how they're going to leave you. Because they share stories about how they left other people or how they did other people. Like they tell you exactly how they're going to behave in the relationship. And it's not like I'm oblivious. Like I hear them and I register like, okay, I recognize. And then when they do the exact same thing that they told me at the beginning they was going to do, because they've been doing that.
Yep.
I still am wounded though. Like, whoa, like even though I saw it coming, because they told me.
Yeah. That's the thing. If we actually listen to each other, we give up all the game.
Look,
like,
we wouldn't be in no relationships though, Raven.
Yeah. We would. If we actually listen to the stuff that people say, nah. Because you would know up front.
Yep.
Like, and I can even say for myself, like I can remember a precise example of a friendship. And this was with another woman where when we became friends, like I had a habit of becoming like allowing people to call me friend, even if I really didn't have an interest in friendship with them.
Me too.
And not cutting it off, not saying like, oh, you know, I really don't think that, like, there's nothing here for me, but just letting it go for whatever reason. There's a whole slew of reasons I could give. And so, but I also would tell them without even being conscious of it myself. I would tell them why we couldn't be friends. I would tell them why our friendship wasn't going to work. And I remember there was a woman, and she just happened to be a white woman that I was friends with. And I remember telling her a story of an old friend that I had who was a similar type of, like, we were friends because we worked together and just were around each other. But the reason that I had to end that friendship, or the reason I chose to end that friendship, was because that person began to say racist things. They didn't acknowledge them as racist. They didn't think that they were doing anything wrong. But like one of the things that happened was that we were in a car, we were driving down the street, and there was an older Black woman sitting at a bus stop. This person like looked at her and made a comment about a monkey.
Huh?
And I was like, nah.
Yeah.
I was like, this has to come to an end. Like I no longer feel safe in this friendship. And so I'm telling this new friend about that friendship and giving her examples of other times when my white women friends, where I had to end a friendship because they began to exhibit their white supremacy in ways that they weren't even aware of. Do you want to know how that friendship ended? And so in that case, even I wasn't aware that I was telling her how our friendship was going to end. Like I wasn't aware enough to be like, oh, why don't I just not be friends with her? Because clearly this 10-year-old story is popping up into my mind for a reason to tell her about. Like, it's not funny. It's not like, you know, it's not relevant to anything that's going on except this entire friendship.
Right.
You know? And so I think that like our bodies, you know, there's a book that I am reading. I had to put it down for a minute, but it's called The Body Keeps the Score. And it's about trauma and PTSD, but it's also helped me to see how our body stores so much
everything.
information.
Everything. And it's
Yeah.
so literal.
Yeah.
It's so literal.
Yes. And
Like,
all we have to do is listen to our bodies. Like,
absolutely.
be in our body.
It's the blueprint. Like,
Yeah.
everything that you need, you know, like I spend a lot of time working with clients talking about food, and the reason is because obviously that's the fuel for the body. But like
Mhm.
I can tell so much about somebody by not only what they eat, but who they eat with,
Mhm.
like how they eat, like not in terms of like how they eat and what they're consuming, but like, whether they eat when they're standing or if they actually
Mhm.
sit, and like those kinds of things. And then too, like one of the other first questions that I ask is like, how are your bowels? Because if you tell me you're constipated, I already know that you got a habit of holding on to shit in your life.
Yeah. Yes. So literal.
Absolutely. Like, you literally are holding on to shit. If your lower back is hurting, then there is undoubtedly a place in your life, an area, maybe multiple areas where you're not feeling supported.
Mhm.
It could be that, your spouse or your partner isn't supporting you in the housework, or maybe your baby daddy or your baby mama is not helping you enough with the kids, or maybe you took on a project at work that you were supposed to be working on it with someone else and they're not doing their part, or whatever. But if you've got lower back pain, you are not feeling supported in one or more areas of your life, because the body is so very literal. It's so funny. A few years ago, I remember that there was something, and I can't remember specifically what I was working through, but it was related to my business. But I needed to take a leap. I don't remember what it was. It might have been when I decided to declare like sensuality as my actual niche. But
Mhm.
I would get to the top of the stairs, like to come upstairs to go to my bedroom. And I always had trouble literally taking the last step. Like, I
Mhm.
would get to the top of the stairs and have a hard time. Like, I would have to literally talk myself into taking the last step,
Mhm.
because that's how literal the body can be.
It's a blueprint. It is the manual for life, and we just have to listen to it.
Absolutely. Like, there is no need to look outside. And that's also like, when I hear people, like, no matter what they believe their modality or their specificity in coaching or therapy or whatever, even in medicine, like, if you are not having conversations with people and asking them about making the connection between their emotions and their physical body, then you
Yeah.
are a failure at your job.
Yes.
Like, you are a failure.
Yeah.
Like, when you go to the doctor and someone says to you, your blood pressure is high, but there's family history, and they are never asking you about what's happening to you emotionally.
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying? Like, why do you not to emotions are a biological experience.
It's just more information. It's more information
Absolutely.
that your body is giving you.
Absolutely. Because if they are separate, then how come when you stressed out, how come your stomach hurt?
Mhm.
Because the brain, as much as we want to act like mental health is a separate thing, the brain itself does not experience any feeling. If somebody
Right.
opened your skull up right now and started digging in your brain would not feel pain. You would feel the pain in other parts of your body, even though they dig it in your head,
Right.
because the brain itself does not have feeling. And that's the reason that we have to stop separating. We have to stop separating the body from spirituality. Anybody
Mhm.
that says that they are spiritual, you are not having spiritual thoughts. You are it creates a physical sensation, because there is no separation between the physical and the spirit.
Yeah.
There is no spirit without the body. It would just be
No.
energy.
Yeah. That is the purpose. That is the very reason for the body. Is so that we have something to interact with, so that we can have
Absolutely.
this dual experience of not just being spirit, but also being aware of spirit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's the whole game.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, even when you speak, like this morning, I was doing something in the kitchen, and I was very aware that the hairs on my left arm stood completely up. And I was like, okay, there's something here with me. Which there's been something that's been in this house for a long time, but I hadn't experienced it for a while, and they stayed raised for several minutes. But it's like I got hair on the other arm too. You know what I'm saying? My other arm was not impacted, but I'm saying like even for I had to experience that physiologically for me to even be aware that there was something in the room with me.
Right. Right.
Like
this is why I think that journaling is a powerful practice. Because I think many people don't pay enough attention to themselves throughout the day to notice an experience like the hairs on their arm raising. Getting in the practice of journaling, at least for me, having that like a set time in the evening where I'm going to sit down and write about the experience that I've had of the day. There's a certain, there's something that I get from the process of writing it for sure. But also just the fact that I'm doing it makes me more aware in the following days.
Absolutely.
And so I'm more likely to pay attention to see, like, if I'm walking in the woods and I hear a particular bird or just a sound that I'm unaware of, that like I'm more likely to really hear it and to pay attention to it, really think about like, what is this experience that I'm having in this moment? If I'm in the practice of journaling, and that might be something that I want to write about later.
Yeah.
And so I think it just really wakes us up to our experience as beings. That's one thing that can do it. Of course, there's a million ways to get at that. Because I think that I've had similar experiences to that in my lifetime and just not been awake to them.
Yep.
Like I remember I went to a story writing, like a memoir writing workshop recently. And so over the weekend, we charted out the kind of path of our life, began to write stories. And one of those stories was about intuition. And I remembered a story that I had really forgotten about when I was about 12 or so. I have a hernia. I have an umbilical hernia. It mostly didn't cause me any pain. It just means that I have an outie. But when I was about 12, it started to cause me pain and excruciating pain. So my mom had to rush me to the hospital. And this was a big deal for us because we didn't have any money, which meant she couldn't just call a doctor because I didn't have a doctor. And she had to take me to the emergency room, which meant a huge cost.
Right.
And so anyway, we're there in the emergency room in this place where like I typically wouldn't be. I hear someone screaming from down the hall. I immediately looked at my mom and was like, what's wrong with his leg? A person I could not see, did not know, had not walked past him. And my first question was, what's wrong with his leg? My mom is very eccentric. She's where I get it from. And so she, like, even without like really believing in anything or whatever, like she just she'll play along with anything. And so I remember that she got up and went to ask the nurse. And this is before like HIPAA laws were in place, I hope, because the nurse told us all his business. But she got up and she went to ask the nurse what was wrong with that person, because I had said that it was something with his leg, and she wanted to see if I was right. And sure enough, this person had been shot in the leg. And that experience to me, first of all, it reminds me that like we come into this world with way more capabilities than we use.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
But also just paying attention to what's happening around us. Like, could I have that same experience now and be given the same information, but just not be paying attention to it? Just not process. Like, I could have that same experience, but just not care enough about the person in the other room to wonder what's wrong with them, or to even be in my body enough to acknowledge that, oh, there's a person over there that's hurt. And so just that brings me back to the desire, one, to stay in my body and to stay in the moment, and also to be aware of all of the things that are happening around us at every single moment that we cannot see, or that are even happening in us
Mm-hmm.
All of this information our body is giving us about our emotional state, about our physical state, about the state of things around us. If we just tap into it, it's amazing.
Well, and I think like that's one of the reasons that meditation is such a thing, because it's not,
Mm-hmm.
meditation doesn't change anything.
Mm-hmm.
Not on the outside. Like, you can meditate all day, your bills are still gonna be due. Like,
Yes.
like it's not a law of attraction tool. You know what I mean? But it
Mm-hmm.
does help you to really be in your body. It helps you. I mean, and it doesn't have to be sitting still. Like, one of my favorite places, I love to take showers. And I
Mm-hmm.
love to just play with the water temperature, because one of the reasons that we have a hard time being with our bodies is that we haven't primed our nervous system, because that's where all the experiences are happening.
Mm-hmm.
But if you can like play with temperature and sensation, you can actually tap into your nervous system in a deeper way. So even like just being in the shower, at the end, a lot of people turn the water down because they want to close their pores, but usually they actually are rushing out. Like, once the water gets cold, their instinct is to get out as soon as possible. But
Mm-hmm.
if you can be with the cold water, be with it, even if it's uncomfortable, without clenching, because instinctively you'll want to tighten everything, tighten your muscles and pull everything in and conserve your energy in the core, because that's instinctive. But if you
Mm-hmm.
resist that instinct and just let yourself like not tense up and just be with the discomfort of the cold, you actually start to prime your nervous system. So,
Yeah.
earlier this year, I had gone to this Korean spa, and they
Mm-hmm.
have one of those freezing cold pools, and it's fucking freezing. And
Yes.
so so I love to be in that pool, because for that very reason. And so I was in there alone at first, and this woman started to get in. She was coming down the ladder, and I said, just breathe, don't tighten. And I was like, I
Mm-hmm.
promise you're going to be able to be with the cold faster if you allow it, as opposed to resisting it, which is what you're doing when you tighten everything. And so she was like, oh my God, like, because within like less than a minute, she was acclimated. And so we were like standing in there talking. And so her friends came and they were like, how are you guys just standing in there? And she was like, get in, but don't tighten. So everybody that got in the pool after that, she kept telling them, like, don't clench, don't clench. So by the
Yeah.
end, like, usually you might see one person in that pool at a time, because nobody wants to get in it for long. They dip in and they get out right away. But it ended up
Mm-hmm.
being like 7 or 8 of us standing in this fucking freezing cold
Yes.
pool, like having a whole conversation about nudity and sexuality and all this shit. And
Of course.
other women were like, how are you guys just, because we were in it like we were in the jacuzzi.
Mm-hmm.
But I was
Mm-hmm.
like, no. She was like, oh my God, I can't believe. And I was like, if you can practice not resisting sensation, because that's the reason you want to get out, then your nervous system becomes more acclimated, which then helps you to tune into everything in your environment.
Stacey, that is the only lesson that we ever need to learn.
Yep.
Like, honestly, that is this whole thing that I've been writing about, the mountains and ridges and finding the way through.
Mm-hmm.
That's it right there.
Yep.
Just stop fighting. Stop fighting.
You just make it worse for yourself anyway.
Yes.
Like,
if you're going to be in the cold water, be in the cold water.
yep.
Let that be the thing that you're doing. Like, if you're going to be alive and walking through life, why must you see everything as a mountain that you have to climb?
Everything's not an obstacle. By the time you get to the top of the mountain, your muscles look way better. Everything is better. Your body is better.
Yeah.
Everything is better by the time you get to. Now, did it hurt on the way up? Yeah.
And sometimes, like, you don't always have to be. Sometimes you're just walking. Sometimes you are just traveling.
Yep.
It is not always an obstacle. There are legitimate obstacles, but everything isn't an obstacle. Everything isn't a fight. And sometimes you can just chill. Chill. Relax. Because the obstacles, even when they are obstacles, aren't going to stop coming because you fight them.
No, they're not. And if you can be in your body, and if you can get in the habit of priming your nervous system, the obstacles or the challenges that you do face in your life, whether it's at work or in your relationships, it doesn't seem like being in your physical body would impact those things, but it does because you're not separate from them.
Right.
Like you're not separate from them.
Even to take this back to meditation and what you were saying earlier, you sit in meditation, and no, meditating is not going to change the physical realm.
Mm-hmm.
Unless, I would say not in this century.
Right.
There was something different happening way back when. But what will happen, I meet a lot of people who think that they can't meditate.
Oh yeah, that's a story they tell themselves.
Right. And if they understood that meditating is a metaphor for life, it is the thing that we have just said, which is that the process is not about emptying your mind. And there are so many people who are teaching this incorrectly.
Mm-hmm.
And we could get into a whole conversation about appropriation and why they shouldn't be teaching it anyway.
Right.
But it's not about emptying your mind of all the thoughts. It's about being with your mind,
mm-hmm.
clearing out the thoughts, and then eventually becoming distracted, bringing your mind back and doing that over and over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
And that begins to strengthen your ability to control your own mind. And so that process that people think is them failing at meditation is actually the first step of meditation. They say like, oh, I sit down and I have all these thoughts. I can't stop thinking about my lunch. Okay, do that. And then when you realize that you're thinking, you don't judge it. You don't fight against it. You don't make it an obstacle. You just say, oh, I'm thinking. And then you come back. And you do that 1,000,000 times.
Exactly. And you know, I'm able to get in the space faster if instead of latching on to the thoughts, if you just like a lot of people invite you, you know, to connect with your breath at meditation. But if you just be with the sensation, whatever you're feeling in your body, whatever the sensation is, because eventually you get to the place, at least I do, I get to the place where I can feel blood flow. And that's when I know I'm in. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's how I know I'm in. That I'm like, okay, I am in the space now because I can actually feel blood flow.
Yeah. My favorite meditations are from Tara Brach. And she starts off every single time by walking you through your body and by having you taking your mind through your entire body and just noticing what's happening.
Absolutely.
You know,
which is
and essentially
so
what you're noticing, you're noticing the energy flowing. You're noticing the blood that's flowing through your body, and that gets you out of your mind, or gets you really just into a greater connection with your spirit. And
it's a great space to be in.
Yeah, and the more you practice it, the more that you even attempt to sit, even if it's for 5 minutes or for 30 seconds, whatever it is, you're building up a muscle. And then you begin to have that same process happen in the things that you're dealing with in life.
Absolutely.
You begin to learn to get in the cold water and not immediately jump back out. Right. Or to be in conflict with someone and not immediately blow up. Right. And to keep coming back to the intention towards relationship, the intention towards vulnerability and connection.
Absolutely.
Even if you stray away from it, even if it gets to a point where y'all calling each other all kinds of names, if you can bring your mind back to, oh, I intend to be living from a place of a heart center. You know, I intend to be connecting with this person, so let me get back to that. That's the process of meditation.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's so fast. I love that I incarnated in this particular body, and I love being in communion with other people. And if it's the kind of communion where we actually experience one another's bodies, I love that too. You know, everything's sexual for me, so I have to share this this experience of someone else's body because this. So I was with someone that I was not attracted to. I was not physically attracted to this person. They were wonderful, and we both had a mutual love of pancakes. And So,
Mhm.
but this person was desired me physically.
Mhm.
And so the first time I was with them, it was a donation. At the time, I was in the space where I was very sated because I was sexually fulfilled otherwise, so I had an abundance to share. The
Mhm.
second time though, I was in a sexless season and therefore was depleted and did not
Mhm.
have any to share. So, once we were in the position where we were going to be, or that's what the intention was, I then realized this is not the sex that I desire. We were like in the position to be, and I was just like,
Mhm.
this is not what I desire. And so I decided I was just going to offer him pleasure. And I was
Mhm.
okay with that. I did not want to have an experience because that's not what I wanted. But in the middle of it, like, and when I tell you there was like zero arousal for me. And then at one point, and this person did not have a lot of skills. So
Mhm.
at one point, he was doing, I don't know what near my ear. And there was this sensation though that went through my body, and all he was doing was like leaning. At this point, he was like near my ear and his mouth was open. And I
Mhm.
said, do that again. And he was like, what? I was like, just open your mouth. Don't touch me. Don't do anything. Just open your mouth. It wasn't something that I could hear, but it was something I could feel. And it was so arousing. And I was like,
Mm.
oh my goodness. And so I still didn't want to have sex with him though. But anyways, when
Right.
he like that didn't change. But I really loved the sensation that I felt. And I was like,
Mhm.
oh my God, like it was like rippling through every part of me. And
Mm.
so when we got ready to part later in the evening, and he was hugging me, and I was seated though, and he was standing because he was leaving, and he hugged me, and I felt that sensation again, and I realized that it was the sound of his blood flow that my body was responding to.
Mm.
And that aroused me greatly. And I was like, "Oh my God." But I will say that I was not capable of being able, because you those are inaudible sounds,
Right.
without a stethoscope anyway.
Right. Right. Right.
But it took all of these years of me practicing embodiment on purpose for
Mhm.
me to be able to have experiences like that. Which, I mean, to literally feel orgasmic just from the sound of someone else's body living. Again, it still didn't make me want to have sex, but it was very arousing though. And then that, there's something really beautiful about just being with longing and just being with arousal
Yeah.
without feeling like you have to do something about it.
I was just going to say everything doesn't have to be about
Nope.
intercourse.
No, penetration is only one kind of sex. I like arousal. Like, one of the things that I like to tell my clients is to flirtify everything.
Mhm.
Flirtify everything. Make everything flirty. You can catch and release all day. You
Yes.
don't have to do anything, because that just charges your batteries and amps up your sexual energy. But you don't got to be fucking to play in sexual energy.
You don't even have to be with another person.
No. Oh God, no. Look, I was not with another person recently. Like,
Yeah, like you can be in that energy
hmm
and be writing,
yep,
you know,
yep,
and be, whatever your outlet is or your input, you can do all of those
absolutely.
things and be in that seat of like sexual energy, of creativity. And the more we can own that, the more we can acknowledge that that exists within me.
hmm
It's not something that another person creates, then it gives us more power in those situations
hmm
when somebody else is there. It gives us the power to control our experience. you
Absolutely.
know
Or to say
hmm,
no to what's being offered to you. Like, this is
right.
not the sex that I want. And I am empowered to say no to that. And just because your clothes is off and my clothes is off does not mean that I need to follow through with anything, because that's not what I want.
Yeah. And that there are other options, just like in the story that you just told,
Mm-hmm.
that there are other options if you don't want to engage in one way. There are
Yep.
many other ways that you can engage, and
Oh,
also not engaging is an option.
absolutely. There are so many. We have been sold a bill of goods that says that sex is intercourse, but that is not true. Intercourse is one kind of sex, but there are a lot of ways to be sexual without ever fucking, which can be very pleasurable. And again, with or without another person. You can be sexual with a crayon and a piece of paper.
I'm laughing. Look, I'm laughing at the thought of people trying to figure out what to do with it.
Yeah, without inserting it in any orifices, I should add.
Correct. Put the crayon on the paper. Lord. But just because that's how disconnected people can be.
Right.
They're like, crayon? Where are you going to put a crayon? On the paper.
So true. Like, this has been so great. Like, I laughed so much and there was so much insight. This was just what I needed today.
As usual. I feel like our talks are always fun, always go on for way too long.
Right?
I don't think we've ever been on the phone for less than 3 hours.
No,
I don't think it's ever happened.
No, never. Look, this is our shortest conversation to date.
Ever. Yes. Well, I didn't have to get up and get a snack.
Right. Look, I have to ask you one more question, because this is I ask the same question at the end of every episode. And the question is, how do you like to be taken care of after a sexual experience?
I like to be held. That is very important to me, to the point where I am very cognizant about that before I go into a sexual experience. And depending on what mood I'm in, because there are some times where I just want to get to it, but I'm not likely to have an experience if I don't think that that's going to be possible.
Yeah, I hear.
And that's something that has changed for me in adulthood and, my later years, because before I didn't know that that is what I wanted and that that's what I was chasing. And so I was always feeling dissatisfied.
Yes.
And so, being held, that's it. That is, I mean, honestly, we can skip everything else and just do that. But that's what I'm seeking.
The Sensuality Project is produced, edited, and hosted by me. Music by bensound.com. The Sensuality Project podcast is a production of StaceyHerrera.com.